Jenny Hill, BBC News, with a question for Herr Müller. Herr Müller, what are you going to do for the European customers who fear they're now stuck with a vehicle whose resale value is significantly lower than it was? Will you be compensating them?
Well, you're asking about the resale value of our cars, and of course we are looking into this issue. I think in my presentation I said that we're going to prepare the right package for each market, for all regions, and that obviously also includes the UK. Of course, it's got to be an attractive package, some form of, well, let's call it compensation for a reduction in the residual value of a car. Yes. Moving on to the other side of the room, Mr. Kraut.
Volker Kraut, Autozeitung. Meine Frage richtet sich an Herrn Müller.
Question to Mr.
Herr Müller, haben Sie denn schon unter dem Aspekt möglicher Kosteneinsparungen ein abschließendes Bild, welche Modelle zukünftig noch wirtschaftlich abbildbar sind, gemacht?
Which models are still viable going forward? We know that the Phaeton has been eliminated. You're not going to launch another Roadster. Will there be further models? The future of the Beetle, of the Charan? Are you thinking about the future of those vehicles? And another question regarding a brand, but I'm not asking whether you're going to sell that brand. I'm talking about the Bugatti brand. Is it still the right brand for Volkswagen from a modesty perspective, and also considering that, as far as I know, this brand has always had deficits. Your focus is going to be on electric motoring, so I think Bugatti is not going to be the spearhead. The 918 Porsche Spyder I think is a much better example. Well, thank you, Mr. Gort, for this very important question. The first is more important than the second. It keeps us busier, I have to admit that. Of course, we have to review the model lineup of the Volkswagen Group, but it doesn't make sense to pick out individual models. What you have to do is you have to look at the whole situation, the overall picture, and ask, how is the automotive world developing as a whole? Drive systems are an important question here. Secondly, the question is, how are we going to position our brands around the world, in the various regions of the world? And the third question is, what is the right product lineup at what point in time? Now, this is, as you can imagine, a relatively complex task. Over the past 10 weeks, since I became the company's CEO, we didn't really have time to address those questions, and I told you that we needed to bring the right people on board, but now we have them. The right people are now on board, and in the first quarter they are going to address exactly this question, and the results will be the basis for planning round 65 and also the basis for our 2025 strategy. So give us another 3 months, and then I'm sure we can get back to you with answers in the second quarter. As for Bugatti, well, you're taking me by my word. You mentioned modesty. When I said modesty, we've got to be modest. I was referring to our behavior. And there are customers in the world, very few customers I know, but some of our customers have the necessary wherewithals to buy those cars, and they want to buy them, so why not sell them to them? We've got the successor to the Veyron. It's ready, and in spite of all the prophecies of doom, we're going to unveil it at the Geneva Motor Show. Demand for this car is surprisingly high, as far as I'm concerned, and I can assure you the second generation is not running up deficits, so I have a clear conscience, I sleep very well, but you are right, we have to review brands such as Bugatti. Or let me rephrase that. We have to ask about the products and which products will be profitable for those brands going forward. Let's go back to the first row.
Ja, Ralf Krüger, Deutsche Presseagentur.
Ralf Krüger, Deutsche Presse
Ich habe eine
Agency.
Frage an Herrn Müller.
A question to Mr.
Sie
Müller.
sprachen vorhin davon, dass die Kostenlawine, die auf den Konzern
Earlier
zukommen,
on, you
momentan
said that the
nicht
group
so
is
richtig
facing
überschaubar ist.
enormous costs. You
Was
don't
bedeutet
really
das
know
denn
how
konkret
high
für
those
Ihre
costs are going to be.
Zulieferer? Wird sich
What
da
does this
auch
mean
dann
for
so ein
your
bisschen die
suppliers?
Kostenschraube etwas
Are you going to
anziehen,
ask
oder
them to
hat das keine
lower their
Auswirkung?
prices, put
Und die
pressure on
zweite
them?
Frage betrifft den
Second
Image-Schaden für
question,
den Dieselmotor.
the damaged image of
Hat
the
der
diesel
Ihrer Ansicht
engine.
nach noch eine Zukunft?
Do diesel engines still have a future going forward?
Wie sehen die Bestellungen aus? Also mein
Seeing
Kollege hatte
as
schon
their
gefragt, Sie hatten die
image has
Frage
been
teilweise
tainted. And what about
beantwortet, die
orders? You
für das
asked that
Jahr sehr
question partly
positiv,
before. You
aber
said
wie haben
that
die
the
sich
incoming
ab
orders are
Oktober denn
positive, but
geändert?
how did incoming orders changed starting in the month of October? Right, your first question, costs and our suppliers. Our purchasing chain is up and running. It works well, and it's not going to talk to our suppliers and mention the diesel issue and ask them to lower their prices. This is certainly not our style. Then the image of the diesel engines, yes, this image has been tainted, you are right. We, Volkswagen, but also our competitors desperately need diesel engines in order to meet CO2 requirements in 2020. Now, you know that electric motoring is not quite as popular as anticipated or hoped for in Germany, even though the Volkswagen Group, among others, is offering a wide range of electric vehicles. So we're going to have to work on that, all of that, and the German VDA Association and also the ACEA Association is lending its support. It was a big issue last week in the board. We're going to launch a pro-diesel image campaign, and there is no reason whatsoever to make diesels, these high-tech products, seem bad if the NOx emissions are okay. And they are okay for the EU6 diesels. We're talking about different regulations in the United States, different regulations in Europe, and the engines, which have caused the problems, are in some cases 10 years old. So I think if we all pull together, it should be possible for us to improve the image of diesel engines and to optimize them further. Diesels and petrol units alike, internal combustion engines in general, to close this gap between conventional drive systems and electrical systems. We've got to bridge and close this gap. And your third question referred to the incoming orders in the last month, the month of November. November saw very good incoming orders. This might partly be due to the fact that China is recovering, so we seem to be able to compensate some negative effects. In Germany, the Volkswagen Group is doing extremely well. There are countries such as Spain and France in Europe, which are seeing a decline in the number of incoming orders, but we are confident that this reluctance is going to change over the next few weeks. Moving on, next question in the first row, somewhere in the middle.
Nancy Holgrave from CNBC. Mr. Mueller, you've talked a lot about the complexities of finding a fix in the United States, but I'm wondering if you can give us specifically more details here on what's preventing U.S. officials from giving your fix the green light, because we know proposal was presented on November 20th, yet no agreement yet. And can you say in complete confidence that a technical solution will be reached that is not cost prohibitive? And then just building on that, the longer it takes, the more hardship it's causing for your dealer network in the United States as well. So are you prepared to offer them more assistance, whether it's in the form of incentives or some financial aid?
Well, I know this has been a problem. We are impatient, we'd like to speed up the process, but we can't tell CARB and EPA when to set their deadlines, when to complete their analyses and come to an agreement with us. We are doing everything we can to make sure that we can complete this process as soon as possible, but I can't give you any more information, and I don't want to speculate, really. I can only say that we work extremely well with those two authorities, and over the next few days, at the latest over the next few weeks, I'm sure we'll have an agreement in place, and that will then be turned into a recall. I'm sorry, I can't give you any more details. Moving on to the other side of the room.
Hallo, Inken Hägermann von der Neuen Presse.
Ingrid Hägermann, Neue Presse. Question to Mr. Pötsch. You said there are no indications that the Supervisory Board and Management Board members were involved. This is also applied to Supervisory and Management Board members that were on the boards 10 years ago or over the past 10 years, and a question regarding the future positioning. You're trying to raise synergies. Where are they supposed to come from? I mean, you're using your modular toolkits. What other potential is there? And centrality and synergies, are these not mutually are these not contradictory? Don't you think? Well, who is or was involved where and when? Let me say this again. We are conducting an extensive investigation. We're also looking at the history of the company. We're going back. We want to know exactly who is and was responsible for what at what point in time. So please ask that question again 1 month from now, once our investigation has been completed. And then we will let you know who was responsible for what. Mr. I think I have to answer the second part of the question. The new strategic positioning and the contradiction between centralization on the one hand and synergies on the other. I don't think that there is a contradiction. I think you can do both. Decentralization essentially means empowering the brands in terms of their day-to-day operations. However, that does not mean that you can't get together and plan the long-term future of the group. That's one way to raise synergies. Mr. Kort mentioned one example, and that is the product lineup for the next 10, 15 years, and the right drive systems for that lineup. Once we have that, we can decide who is going to do what. You said yourself that our modular toolkits are doing well, but that doesn't mean that everything is set in stone for the next 10 years. We are reviewing things, we have to develop them further, and we are confident that we can raise further synergies.
Ja,
Mr. Hapke,
NDR Fernsehen.
from NDR Television.
Zwei Detailfragen zunächst an
Two
Herrn
detailed
Pötsch.
questions to Mr. Pötsch.
Wir haben ja nun einerseits gesagt, Namen
On
können
the
Sie
one
noch
hand,
nicht
you
nennen.
said you
Andererseits
can't
haben
give
wir
us any
deutlich
names.
gemacht, dass der bisherige
On the other
Erkenntnisstand
hand,
ist, es ist eine
you said
kleinere Gruppe von
that
Ingenieuren im
apparently
Unternehmen.
only a small
In welchem
group of engineers
Unternehmensbereich
was
wusste
involved.
man denn Bescheid, denn die
Which
Fortentwicklung
area
dieser
of
Schummelsoftware,
the
das haben
company
Sie ja auch
knew
dargestellt, war
about this cheating
systematisch. Also ist da
software
der Bereich
systematically?
Motorenentwicklung der
Is it
Kenntnisträger?
engines
Ist der
development?
Bereich Dieselmotorenentwicklung
Is it
der
diesel engines development
Kenntnisträger?
specifically?
Wie kann man den Unternehmensbereich beschreiben, in dem man Bescheid
Which
wusste?
area in the company
Zweite
knew about what was going
Es
on?
ist ja offenbar so gewesen,
Second
dass bei der
question,
Entscheidung, diesen Dieselmotor für die USA zu
It was
entwickeln, von
decided to
vornherein
develop a
klar
diesel
war, dass man
engine
dieses
for the
nur
US
erreichen
market.
würde, die
And I think
Einhaltung
right
der
from the
strengen
beginning,
Grenzwerte in den
it
USA.
must have been clear
Wenn man
that
das
the US rules and regulations could only be complied with if you use the SCR catalytic converter in connection with AdBlue. Have you found out when this decision was taken, by which body? The decision to do it without any SCR catalytic converter and without any NOx trap. After all, this is an ambitious, or was an ambitious target. You said you knew at the time it's difficult to achieve it. And question to Mr. Müller. A question regarding your task as you see it. You said you would like to focus more on the company's strategy. Now, this company is developing engines, and apparently at the time it was known that it was not possible to develop an engine on time, an engine that complies with the necessary rules and regulations. Is that a piece of information that you would like to be informed about going forward?
Gut, zum Auftakt. Now, first of all, we're talking here about engines or engine issues that are related to engine development, where we attach great importance to scrutinizing those departments, i.e. those technical functions that have developed engines, right? I mean, that is a proviso, and can I ask you for your understanding at this point that we would like to continue this type of investigation, and then once we have results, we will present them in one go, as it were, and then we'll also make a separate statement about them. And that, in fact, is also true for the different committees that will have to deal with it and have possibly dealt with that in the past. So basically it goes back to the question of who is in charge of what, and we'd let you know in due course. Point number two, or second part of your question, you called me a strategist. Well, I'm not sure I'm a strategist, I mean it's for you to say, but I would imagine to see a company here where in the future no such things can happen again, where we have an end-to-end information flow which is well organized, where in the future we will not only apportion blame and find the culprits, but rather jointly look for the best solution. And I think here comes what is really important, that information, when we get it, must not be just a one-off publication that trickles down somewhere and then disappears from there, but any information we find, any information we yield from this analysis must also be established on hierarchies that normally do not deal with those questions, right? So everyone in this organization must be in a position to analyze the gravity of a problem. I don't know if that's understandable, how I phrased this issue. As a member of the Board of Management, you get dozens and millions of emails every day. And obviously, this raises our awareness to what is really at stake. But there are some things that you don't have the time to read, and you do not get the gist of it even, because there's too much information and it's not structured and addressed to those people who should know. And this is why we're ever so astounded why this has happened. Why could something like that have happened? Apparently, because information was not shared, it stayed within a small circle of people or engineers, and we have now stepped up this investigative effort. Today, to this very date, we have to say that in that, call it the triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, something may have happened within that smaller scale. Now, I know you'll be angry at me when I'm telling you that we only have time for 2 questions now. We have to start in the middle, in the front, because we had an earlier question. Then comes Mr. Murphy, please.
Hallo. Ich hätte 2 Fragen, und zwar zum einen,
Well, 2 questions, please.
Sie haben ja einige Veränderungen
For one, you also have made some changes already below the board level, strategy and digitalization. And do you to take any additional steps in terms of digital transformations or any changes to that team, to the digital team? And you also said you have been done excellent progress with the collaboration of the US authorities. That apparently has not always been the case in the past. So how has that good cooperation been borne out, come to fruition? And when you go to the US, do you travel to the Detroit Motor Show, or will you be later there after the show? Can you clarify that again? Well, I said I'm going to Detroit. That's what I said. And as far as I know today, from Tuesday to Friday, I will be traveling the United States during that time and meet the authorities there. Number two, or it rather was your first question, what should the design and structure of my function be, or of our departments related to my function? So that restructuring has been largely finished. I have to reappoint one more position, which is quality assurance, but all the other job positions have now been filled. Also, marketing and sales, production, those have been filled now. And the same is also true for the product and the modular strategy, which means that after the 4th of January, we're fully operational. And there, I'm quite confident to say that I found a team there that is really top flight. And therefore, it is true, I hope, that we will do an excellent job. What was the second part of your question again? Can I ask you? Collaboration with the United States? Well, you know, if there's two that don't get on with each other, that's because either of them are to blame. There may be misunderstandings, there may be incorrect interpretation of information, be it as it may. I do understand that the American authorities were a bit disappointed or cross at what we did, because they believed they had given the right information, which they have indeed shared with us, and then it takes me back to what I said earlier. For some reason, in Germany and in our company, apparently that information hasn't arrived in the place that it should have arrived, or it has not been interpreted the way that the Americans have meant it to be interpreted. Now, fortunately, that has been solved now. We're in a very factual and collaborative mode of engagement, which had been the case in the past, in fact. So this already now is a good condition, a good prerequisite for our ongoing discussions and also finding an agreement that will help us to know how we're going to develop in the future. And hopefully also we want to establish and to continue to offer the diesel engine as a successful product in the United States. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Müller. Mr. Pötscher, unfortunately, I'll have to end this press conference now. It's too bad, says Mr. Müller. Not because I want to annoy you in any kind of way, but we have more appointments later on today. And also, finally, we talked about Detroit a number of times. On the traditional group night on Sunday, we will be available for your questions in Detroit and also in the following weeks as well. For the time being, thank you very much for taking the time to travel to Wolfsburg, and I'll be looking forward to meeting you again to discuss those issues going forward. Thank you very much indeed.